Well, hey everyone, it's Nate with episode 281 of The Vinyl Guide, the podcast for record collectors and music nerds. And guess what, people? We've got an amazing guest this week, Mr. Ian MacKaye of Dischord Records, who you may also know from Fugazi, Minor Threat, and more. Now, let me just openly share, it's a bit of a trip for me to have a chance to interview my heroes. Having this podcast has enabled me to do things and talk to people that I never really thought possible. People I idolized in my life, people I drew and continue to draw inspiration from, and people who I just saw do something great, and it motivated me to ask more of myself. And I got to tell you, it's an absolute honor to have Ian MacKaye on the show. He is certainly one of my heroes. Way back from the day in high school where Dave Chai loaned me a Minor Threat cassette, I've been an avid listener of the projects that Ian has been involved in, either directly through his music or on his label. I know whenever he puts his stamp on something, it's not only of the highest merit. I personally know that if it's got Ian's name or the Dischord logo, it's already been vetted for quality. Now, I need all of you to stop what you're doing right now and listen to what I'm about to tell you, because it's really important. I want to make sure every listener is aware of the Dischord Records box set. They're issuing their first 6 records, all 7-inch singles, Dischord 1 through 6, available for pre-order now at boxset.dischord.com. This is an official reissue of all 6 singles, complete with all original artwork, inserts, lyric sheets, and more. And look, if you try to get original pressings of these records, they're highly collectible. Each one of these will easily set you back $1,000 or more. So now you have a chance to own all these 6 records, all of them for just $50 for the box set. But here's the deal. You need to pre-order this box set by June 11th. You will only get the box set direct from Dischord, Dischord.com. They won't be in shops. It's mail order only, and it's only available at boxset.dischord.com, and it's only available for pre-order until June 11th. On June 12th, you'll be shit out of luck. So order yours now, boxset.dischord.com. Limit 1 per customer, but you can order as many times as you like. Now, in my discussion with Ian, we cover so much. We started out with an hour scheduled, and we went nearly 2. So I've broken this discussion into 2 episodes. This is part 1. Part 2 will be coming out shortly. Ian and I talk in detail about the early days of Dischord, the singles, the nerdy details, the hidden messages on the artwork, the folding and sleeve gluing parties, the history of Dischord House, cataloging the Dischord archive, and heaps more. Man, we cover so much, so please hit the subscribe button on your podcast app so you can hear the moment episode 2 arrives. If you're a fan of Dischord, punk rock, music, or even just art movements, you're going to want to hear the whole conversation. And finally, let me just say this. Normally, I pause the interview about the halfway mark and share a word from our sponsors. That's how I pay my bills here, but I'm not going to do that for the Dischord episodes. Ian and I get in some great conversational flows, and I don't want to interrupt them. So let me just quickly thank our sponsors now. AudiofileUSA.com, the online used record shop that only sells near mint and excellent condition records. AudiofileUSA.com is a family-owned and operated business. They have some beautiful records, so please visit them and support what they do. AudiofileUSA.com. Also, huge thanks to Groove Washer, the record cleaner I use every day. Again, another family-owned and operated business. Groove Washer is out of Missouri. They make a great product for record nerds. Go to groovewasher.com. Use discount code VinylGuide10 at groovewasher.com. Alrighty, enough of my yammering. Here is part 1 of my interview with Ian MacKaye. Hello, Mr. MacKaye.
Yo.
Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you. I'm not seeing you yet. Let me see. I see you now. Yeah. Hold on. There I am.
There we are.
How's the level? Can you hear me all right?
I can hear you all right. Yeah, sounds good.
Sound good?
Yeah.
I have a reasonable setup. So
we're all having to get used to this whole thing over the last year of getting decent mics and everything.
Although I have to say that from originally, even before the pandemic, I fucking hated the way Skype calls sounded. And some people are doing interviews using Skype. It just sounded terrible to me. It just drove me crazy. The kind of tinny, boxy sound.
Yep.
Really
A lot of compression on it. Yeah.
I thought I have mics. I'm going to set something up. Well, I know that I didn't mean to bum rush you. I just realized that things are so busy right now that I would be happy to talk to you whenever. But if you think you can actually do this, we can get it up in time for people to know about the box. Because really our thinking at this point is we just want people to know about it, because once the door closes on the pre-orders, that's it. Right. It's not in production. That's it. That's the number we're going to press. We're going to, so whatever, wherever we end up. And I always feel like I was talking to some friends of mine today, some people I know very well, and neither one of them were aware of the box set. And they're people I know and they live here. And I was like, shit, obviously the word isn't out. So whatever.
We'll sound the conch shell. Don't worry.
Right.
So do you have an idea of how many that'll be? How many orders do you have so far?
Well over 5,000,
Great.
Oh, it's going really well. Yeah.
Okay.
It's going well. And that's what made me think like, oh shit, people might want to, I just don't want people to be disappointed. Honestly, the whole premise of the pre-order was to, not make it an exclusive thing or a limited thing, but to give everybody an opportunity. If they want it, they can get it.
Yeah.
And we're really pleased that somebody, it's it's going to probably take us 5 months to deliver it because the pressing plants are such a mess right now. But this is the only way we could possibly do it. And the idea really was to make it as available and as reasonable to as many people as possible. I know there's issues with the shipping, because overseas shipping is astronomical. To Australia is, I think, $45.
$47, yeah.
Right. It sucks, but that's exactly what it is. We're not charging any handling or anything. This is purely the post office. And I imagine if you sent something to us, it would be something, in the ballpark,
Yeah. But here's the thing about the single box set. And I ordered mine, I think, within 5 minutes of hearing about it, because these are records that I've wanted to have for years, and getting close to any sort of original copy of one would cost as much as my car.
Right.
The prices have gone astronomical. So the desire to now do a repress, was that kind of the thinking behind this reissue, to be able to put this music kind of back in people's hands at some sort of affordable cost?
It's a little more, there's more to it. First off, the music has always been available in one format or another. All of these records that music has remained on other formats. So there's, for instance, there's a 407 inches vinyl 12-inch record, which is the Teen Idols, SOA, GIs, and Youth Brigade. And then there's the number 12, Minor Threat, which is the 2 singles. Those are on vinyl. They were on cassette. They're on CD. They're streaming. They're digital downloads. So the music has always been available. One thing that has become really, that we've thought about for years, and it's an interesting thing, and is that for most people, for instance, Minor Threat, they know Minor Threat largely through the discography CD, which I think is a 24 song or 27 song. I can't remember how many songs it is now, but it's basically every song we ever recorded, or that we had released on one CD. And so people's relationship with that music, in a way, is like, if you have the first song we recorded and the last song we recorded all on the same piece of music. And I think it doesn't give people, they don't think about it the same way. You don't hear the progression of the band in the same way. And some people think, oh, well, it's the same, like Days When the Student recorded 24 songs. But actually, the first single was 8 songs. The second single was 4 songs. The Out of Step record was 8 songs with little hidden things on it. And if you think about it that way, the way you would come to those songs, if you thought about the Minor Threat first single, just those first 8 songs, it really is a different context. And then when In My Eyes comes out, you have to kind of think about these 2 separate records and realize, for instance, I was, I was and remain a huge Black Flag fan. Their first record was the Nervous Breakdown EP, which for me was one of the most important records ever released. And I really wore that thing out, played it over and over. This is before Henry was in the band, obviously.
Right.
Then Jealous Again comes out with Ron singing, right? Ron Reyes. And that was a very different record than Nervous Breakdown. Very different. Then I think the next thing that came out was the Dez single, which was I've heard it before, and is it American Waste? I think it is. I think it's the song, and that was a whole other thing. And each of those records were so unique and unto themselves. If you were to slam all together on one record, you would have it's just a different relation. But I really enjoyed encountering this music in its original format. So for instance, last year when the pandemic kicked in, I got to thinking about releases and what the bands intended, how they intended things, and originally, organically. And I have the Beatles mono box set of their first, their record. I think it's up to, I think the White Album is the last thing they did in mono.
Right.
And I was thinking I mean, as much as I've listened to the Beatles forever and ever and ever, but I've never sat down and listened to each vinyl record in the chronological order of the releases, not the weird reissues, not the American versions, not the best of, none of that stuff, but literally the original records as they intended them, and listen to them in order. And it gave me a really fascinating insight to, or at least I imagined I was getting a fascinating insight to the progression of this band, who are, clearly, the greatest band or one of the greatest bands of all time. I immediately followed up by doing that with UK Subs. I listened to each of their albums. I would like to have done it with their singles, but I don't have every one of their early singles. I have most of them, but I had all their first four. I have everything up. Well, the original lineup, or the Nicky Garrett, Charlie Harper lineup, they had alphabetical album titles.
Right.
I don't know if you know. So there was Another Kind of Blues, Brand New Age, Collision Course, or is it Crash Course?
I think it's
Course?
Crash
I don't know,
Course.
the live one. Crash Course.
Yeah.
And then Diminished Responsibilities, and then Endangered Species. A, B, C, D, E. And I sat down, listened to each of those in order, the original records in the order of the release, and it was really fascinating. Then I did it with Hendrix, and I did it with The Damned, and I did it with Led Zeppelin, and I was just going through anything that I had. I did with Cheap Trick, anything that I actually had all of the records. It was a fascinating way to think about it and to study music. So I think in some ways, Jeff Nelson, who's the co-owner of Dischord, we've always felt, as much as we love this discography and we love that people have enjoyed that thing so much, the Minor Threat discography, we've also thought about like how much we love the original 7 inches. And they're not, part of the problem with 7 inches is that they're essentially like calling cards. You can't possibly make any money with them.
Right.
So the CD actually was able to generate enough money to actually be able to pay everybody in the band. Singles are just, you're
right. Proof you're in a band.
Right, yeah. I'm in a band, right? Which it's great, but it's also, and I think, so that was one aspect. It was like the original, so people could actually hear this music in the original format. And we had the, we actually have all the original boards, of course, Dischord. So we have all the original boards. We have the original tapes.
Boards, so you mean the layout, where you Xerox stuff?
The pay stubs. Yeah, we have the original pay stubs. We have, the actual, so this is not like us, scanning in an album cover. This is us actually scanning in the original boards. And if you look, we've been posting some things that are like, you can see the close up of the detail, and you can literally see like the stuff that Jeff would glue on, like the Teen Idols. You can see the press type. You can see you can see tape on some of them, like the stuff that got lost to photocopying, really, because that's what the original CDs largely were, was photocopies or something like that. so I think that we thought like, all right, we should do really proper, really nice thing. And we can put them all together. And this is Dischord 200, this is our 200th release. And I don't know, some people who know Dischord probably have noticed this, but that every release that ends with a 0, I'm on.
Okay.
So Dischord 10 is Out of Step, Dischord 20 is Egg Hunt, Dischord 30 is Fugazi, Dischord 40 is another Fugazi record, Dischord 50 is Skewbald, Grand Union, Dischord 60 is Fugazi, 70 is Fugazi, 80 is Fugazi, 90 is Fugazi, 100 is the Teen Idols, Teen Idols demos record. Right. 110 is Fugazi, 120 is, I think I don't know what 120 is. Well, it's something that I'm on. It's another Fugazi record, I think.
So you've been building up to 200 for a while. Has it been something on your mind? Like, I wonder what's gonna be special for that number?
Well, the thing is that Jeff, in the very beginning, it was Jeff, because number 10 was Out of Step, and that was me, and Jeff and I were both on. Then number 20 was Egg Hunt, which we were both on. But then 30 was Fugazi, and Jeff wasn't in the band. So then we thought, well, 50, 100, 150, like 150 is the Minor Threat demo. So we said, like, on those, we should both be on. So then we thought, like, well, this is a way to do the singles and also have me and Jeff both on it. But also, I think just to give people, it's 40 years. We just turned 40 in December. And it just seemed like it's all kind of lined up well, to kind of just do something like this. We've been working on it for 5 years. It's been it's an enormously complicated project. And honestly, even this part of it, we thought a lot about how, we were thinking, should we press this amount and then just put it on sale? And that didn't feel right, because it just turned into like a collector's item thing, which we weren't interested in. But on the other hand, if we pressed high, they cost a lot to make. So that's there's one thing Dischord as a policy is that we say, like, a record that's not listened to is a piece of trash. So if you make 5,000 records and you sell 2,000 of them, that's 3,000 pieces of trash. And the world does not need any more trash. So we've always tried to be super efficient and thoughtful so that we don't end up with a lot of extra stuff, even if it's paid for by the profit that we got. I just hate that. I'm not interested in making more plastic. Plastic is the worst shit in the world. And luckily, with some like a vinyl or records, like when you infuse that plastic with something that has some kind of value, spiritual or soulful or whatever it is, then it's a worthwhile vehicle. Otherwise, it's just a piece of trash. And this particular project, it cost so much, each of these boxes, that we thought, well, how would we do this? And then we finally, this idea of doing the pre-order came up. And then we said, well, if we do pre-order, we really have to honor, they got to be really on top of this. We have to really, because people are going to be entrusting us with their money. Right. So the idea was we set up everything is separate. It's like a separate website, separate bank account, separate deals with the checking or the credit card, all the commerce stuff separate. The idea being that all the money that is coming in will stay in one place, and that money will be the money that's used to create the box set. But no matter what, it's there. So should anything happen, we would be able to refund everybody in full and just keep it clean and separate, because we realize, like, I don't like debt. I don't have debt. I've never had debt. And this is actually, for me, entering into an arrangement which people have entrusted us with so much money, and then having to deliver something months away. I'm really serious about making sure we do this correctly.
I think I think I can speak for others when I say we trust you with our money, Ian. It's fine.
Thank you.
So you mentioned something earlier. I want to unpack a little bit. You said putting this together, aside from the financials, putting this together is complicated. What are some of the complexities you ran across that perhaps you didn't expect in embarking on this project?
Well, the sheer number of moving parts, for instance. We had this long discussion about, like, the original records, like, we were making them by hand, right? And the lyric sheets vacillated. You have one that was like, the Teen Idols one was 11 by 14, I think, and folded over and quite thick in the sleeve. The Minor Threat one was I think it's 11 by 8 by 11. No, 8. No, sorry. It's tall. It's maybe that's 11 by 14. Maybe the Rationale one's even bigger. Then the SOA one is like regular sized or letter sized, and so you had all these different size lyric sheets, and each of them, when you fold them, they make a certain profile, like they're thicker in profile, which is not a problem if you're selling one single. But if you have 6 with all different sizes, you have to think about how they sit.
It's like a pillow.
Really right. And you have to also worry because if there's pressure on it, then if it's, in theory, it could warp the records because they're not the width of the record, right? That's a problem. Like if you ever bought a record where they have a really thick booklet in or something, and then if you think about it, if you have a box of records, say 20.
I bought records that have been shrink wrapped too tight, and that's warped the record. Right. So yeah.
Well, if you have a booklet in a record, let's say it's a booklet and it's not 12 inches, but it's like a smaller one. If you have a box of them and it's a thick booklet, the weight of those records will eventually make the vinyl curve around the box. So then we discussed, should we make a uniform lyric sheet so they're not different sized? But then we thought of, I said, we got to make it the original sizes. Like we can't. So then we had to really think about, okay, and then how deep will the box be and how much pressure would be in there, and then because you have these 6 singles, you have 6 lyric sheets, and also the vinyl, we wanted to make it the same original color vinyl. So the SOA is on green and In My Eyes is on red, as were the originals. But really, and then finding out when we were going through the original art, realizing that there was some, even within one pressing, the cover would change because we wouldn't print all the covers at one time.
Right.
We'd print a few hundred, and then we'd print a few hundred, and and we'd make little corrections. So which one do you, So there's just all that sort of stuff. And then, I had to remaster from the tapes. We had to cut the vinyl. Then we had a problem with the pressing plant, their machine busted. So then we have to go to another plant and get more test pressings made. It's just a really complicated project. And then we decided we should really put something in there, a card or something with a little bit of some words on it. So we were going to put a little card with some information on it. And then it turned into a panel, a 6-panel, a 4-panel little fold over thing. And now it's a 12-page book. It's just because that's part of Jeff, because Jeff he always just keeps thinking, and he's like, oh, but now we got to put this and put that in. And so it just kept telescoping.
Generally, the approach of being a pack rat works against people, but it sounds like over the years you guys have saved all the bits, all the boards. You say all the obviously all the tapes. Are all the Dischord tapes accounted for? Is there anything missing from the whole catalog there?
I have it all. I think. I mean, there's a couple of tapes. I mean, where things got really screwed up was when things shifted to digital mastering, because I tried to be on top of this so that we would master something to file. And then I would, you would because you're mixing on it. The computer ultimately was where we record on tape, but then you would mix down onto the computer because it's just so much easier to edit. And then if I was trying to be really on top of it, but then the master file, putting that onto a tape. So we have tape as a master. This is in recent years, right?
Right.
And there's been a few where I just didn't do it, and then the master files disappeared. Now, there are CDs of these records, and you have 16-bit masters, which, I mean, a 16-bit master is, in many ways, for the fidelity that we're operating at, pretty incredible.
If your ears are north of 50 years old, then yeah, I agree.
Right. I mean, if you think about the joy you felt when you bought some bootleg in 1983, and it was the worst sounding thing, but it was still joyful to listen to. I remember when digital came along, and suddenly all these bootleg things. I was always so interested in live Hendrix stuff and study all those Beatles bootlegs. And hearing the digital thing changed everything in terms of bootlegs, because because of the fact that the vinyl was boot, they had to do it in these sort of, probably somewhat scuzzy pressing plants. the quality of those things were just terrible, so noisy. And then suddenly you have these like crystal clear digital recordings. So the 16-bit recordings are great sounding. The fact that I forgot to make a tape, that makes me sad.
Okay.
But that's the way it goes. You know, I mean, I've actually since then I've made a master from the 16-bit. This has only really happened with one or two releases, but there was just one in particular that, and we've reissued. Nobody's ever noticed it. Not I'm the one who knows. I just know there was an oversight on my part.
Right.
And the thing about there's a couple of things about me and Jeff that, like, I'm 59, and I've lived in 3 houses my entire life. I own 2 of the houses. My dad still lives in the first one. So I didn't need to move. And as a result, I didn't need to make a decision about what stays, what goes. So I'm not a hoarder, but I have a lot of stuff. I kept it because it was important to me or to us, right? So we had all that stuff. And in many ways, I feel like that's the having it now. Like, I feel like, well, I have a responsibility to make it, like, get it organized. So it's not just not just my brain that can figure out where things are. And then to make it accessible, which is what I've been doing for the last 11 or 12 years now. Just working on the archives at Dischord House, which is an insane project too.
Are you preparing the archives for the Dischord House for future years? Like, how are you treating
it? First thing you have to do is get things. You got to remember, I lived there for 21 years. So all of the files, all the tapes and records and like master tapes and record collection and letters, it was my stuff, and the Dischord stuff, and Fugazi stuff, everything all mushed together in my room. So the first thing to do was to parse it. So to get my personal stuff out of there, and bring it to this house where I am now. This is where I live with Amy and Carmine, our son. And so pull the personal stuff out. And then when you have just, say, the public stuff, then getting that organized. So I have it split into a Dischord collection, a Fugazi collection, and a minor threat collection, and sort of a general collection. And then start organizing, making databases. So I have 35 years or now 40 years of punk correspondence, and it's in a database. I have all the letters in like acid-free folders and stuff, and you can find. So if someone wrote me, I can look it up and usually find the letter.
So fans, listeners, peers, everyone.
Yep.
Okay.
Not everyone, because not every letter was saved, but a lot were. A lot.
Okay.
What's some of the surprising things you found in going through that material?
Well, there's a lot of, it's funny. Like, I came across, do you know who Richard Kern is?
Oh, that name is ringing a bell, but I'm not sure.
He's a photographer from New York,
okay.
And he was he was kind of a dark side kind of guy. He took a lot of like certain nude photos. He did a lot of stuff, I think, with Lydia Lunch. He did this movie called Right Side of My Brain with Lydia Lunch. And it's very sort of dark and, oh, sorry, there's kids out my window. Hold on.
Get out of here, kids.
Yeah. Well, if they start yelling too much, we can.
I heard the birds earlier. They were quite lively.
I had the windows open. So that's where you are. That's how things are going in Washington right now. So Richard Kern was a photographer who I think of as sort of being that no New York kind of no waves era stuff. I found a card from him saying, something to the effect of like, "Hey, I think straight edge is a great idea." I was shocked. I totally have no memory of that whatsoever. Which was, from 1982. It was really kind of cool. And then there's letters from just people who have I famously have a letter from Dave Grohl when he was 15. Asked me if I can help him find a guitar player or a band members for a thrash band he wants to form. Stuff like that. And there's other stuff which is quite interesting, which is, a series of letters from people who I clearly had a correspondence with that are very familiar. Like the way they're writing is like we're just, I I can't remember exactly who they are, but clearly we were writing,
Right.
But that was the thing about that. I had an awful lot of correspondence, people I wrote with, and those relationships existed only in that place. I didn't really think of them outside of that place.
Right.
So going back in and finding these letters, I'm like, oh my God, and the funny thing is I'm still like earlier today, I was hold on. I was answering mail. That's what I was doing today. These are postcards and letters. Still answering the mail. The email thing is horrific for me. I have 3,300 emails in my inbox right now. Yeah, it's insane. But paper mail is kind of, I figure if they go through the trouble of walking to the post office, and I can scratch a few things back to them.
So curious, what is the end point of that then? If you put all these letters, all this correspondence in a database, obviously the music is going to have this purpose beyond our lifetimes, but the letters and those sort of things.
There's also flyers, photographs.
Mm-hmm.
I have thousands of flyers. I have a massive fanzine collection, like thousands of fanzines.
Yeah.
Well, the first thing was to get it organized. I will die at some point, and somebody's got to do it. Like then Amy or someone's going to be saddled with this stuff. I'm trying to get this done now. I know what this stuff is. I can name it. I can place it. Okay. Then by separating these collections, they become their own thing. So there's the fanzine collection, the correspondence collection, and each of those things, they're going to exist in the Dischord archive. Like it's going to be a place where people have called me already looking for stuff. I'm like, yeah, I think I can help you. Come take a look, or whatever. And, mm-hmm. Or let me take a look for you. Yeah, I have something. It just depends on what the thing is. And that's the initial idea. Eventually, I don't know what's going to happen with the house. I don't know what will happen, but all this collection will end up in there'll be different archives probably they'll end up in. There's a DC Public Library has a really amazing punk archive mm-hmm. that they started, which is we're partners with them in a way. So these collections will be, the idea is that we're going to share a database. So if somebody's over there doing research, they can find stuff in the Dischord archives. The reason I want this stuff in the house is that I think the house is part of the archive. Because the house, I think, and I could be wrong, but with the exception of maybe Dial House where Crash live, I think Dischord is the oldest existing punk house mm-hmm. where we moved in there October 1st 1981, so we 40 years in October, and it's always stayed part of that world. It was a place where not every but almost every American punk band stayed when they're on tour, because that's the way we used to travel in the early 80s. Mm-hmm. You go play and you stay at some punk house, and they're all gone except for Dischord House. And I think, and this is, I made to answer your question about why, I think that the American punk scene, I think it was a very significant cultural event, and it will be one that will be largely misrepresented by the machinery, the industry. The industry will always pay homage to the people on their labels. Mm-hmm. Right? They're not going to pay homage or pay any attention, I should say, to the independent labels. But the independent labels were the independent bands, that was the true, that was the real fiber mm-hmm. of the scene. I mean, of course you had bands that, you had bands that came along and were on major labels that sold vast amounts of records, but they didn't come out of a vacuum. They right. came out of a really thriving underground that was just by its nature underground, and there was not enough money in there for the industry to be interested. But if you look at any documentary made by the industry, they largely are going to hew to Sex Pistols, Nirvana, maybe X, but all major label bands, because that's their way they think, which is fine. I'm not mad about it. I don't care. They can do what they want. I do think that throughout history, people have been doing things, toiling away and making things without planning on or requiring massive financial gain or attention. But that's the real, that's the manna. That's the really good stuff. And a lot of that stuff just goes away because they're people, it's not important to them. Mm-hmm. And there's this sort of time just kind of, it just disappears. So in the 60s, for instance, there was a huge underground music scene in America. There's so many great garage punk singles. But where's any sense of the structure of that? It's very hard to find any evidence because the only people that talk about it are the ones that went on to major labels. But all these kids were making records, and they were incredible records. Did you ever study like 60s garage stuff?
Psych and 60s, yeah. Well, and it's hard to find them you need to start with like the Nugget series to at least give you some sort of foot into that world.
Right, and Pebbles and all that, right? You just start getting into that. That music is so fascinating to me, but there's very, very hard to find any kind of understanding of what was happening. But we're in an unusual place because we actually have the stuff. And I think it was important. And I feel like that I want people, I don't think of I'm not nostalgic and I'm not sentimental about it, but it's fucking cool. And I think that there'll be people down the road who are like, what was happening? Well, here's some pottery shards for you to figure out what the hell was going on. That's what we got, some pottery shards for you. The other thing I was going to say that this is, I don't know, I could be wrong, but I think there's a good chance that the American punk scene will be the last, I don't know about other countries, but it will be the last youth movement that used paper to communicate. And there's there's paper trail. So I have all these, I have these letters from Dave Grohl at 15 or whoever, I actually have but it becomes digital after that. And I'm not saying one's better than the other. I'm just saying you can hold a letter and you can't hold an email.
I think it's really interesting that as you're doing this, Henry's on the other side of the country doing his own similar project with records.
Henry and I talk to each other every week.
Yeah.
We're just shy of 50 years of being best friends. And we are constantly discussing and challenging each other. He come to see my collection, I go to see his collection, and we're like, all right. And in fact, there's a woman named Nicole Prokopenko who worked with me for 5 years. She still works. She's not, at the moment, she's out doing other things. But she worked with me for 5 years. And then Henry he met her, and she flew out there and helped him. And she worked on stuff out there too, in LA. His collection is incredible. Mm-hmm. But with him, it's not just records. He has an incredible record collection, of course. He also has, I would imagine, one of the largest poster collections, punk, like late 70s British, early 80s American and British American punk poster collections in the world. He loves paper.
So are you guys sharing a database together?
No, but we don't need to share. We can always just check in. He wrote me the other day and asked me oh, you know what this is? And I'm like, oh, hold on, let me take a look. I only have one copy. If I had two, the other one's yours. That's the way my general rule with Henry is, if I have two, one's his.
Right. Okay.
And I think it's sort of, this is the way we operate.
I'm just thinking future generations to be able to search multiple archives.
Yeah. At some point that, it hasn't quite gotten to that place where it's I have a dozen different databases, but they're not in one database yet.
Okay.
That will come. I'll get there. All things in time.
Dischord House, you guys moved in 1981.
Yeah.
Was that something the band bought? Was that something Dischord bought?
Oh, we didn't buy it.
How did you acquire? Okay.
No, we were just kids. Jeff and I and Rich Moore had all graduated from Wilson High School in 1980. And Eddie Janney had graduated from Wilson High School in 81. But we lived at home. We were all living at home that next year after we graduated. So the end of the Teen Idols and the beginning of Minor Threat, we were living at home. At some point, it just might, it's like, we got to do something. We can't just live at home.
Right.
I think our parents were like, you have to go do something. You can't just live here. But also, we needed a place to practice because most of us in Minor Threat, for instance, we lived in row houses. So you can't practice there because of neighbors. And we were desperate for a place to practice. So we had a criteria. The criteria for finding a house, a group house, was it had to be detached, right? Mm-hmm. It had to be cheap because we were broke as hell. We had no money. And it had to be in a relatively safe neighborhood. And the reason for that, I mean, aside from the obvious, which you don't want your stuff stolen, but I think more pressing and what was on our mind was we knew, now we were all teenagers, so we knew the moment we moved into the house, it would be the first house where our friends would come. It was like a fort because everybody still lived at home. Mm-hmm. So as soon as we established a beachhead, they were going to come. And they were kids. They were 14, 15 years old. Nobody had a car. So if they're coming out and they got to walk from the metro or from a bus stop to the house at that time in 1981, which was a little bit, it was sketchy for punks on the street. Mm-hmm. We just knew it couldn't be too dangerous a neighborhood. We had to think about this safe passage so they can get. So we started thinking about where we could live. So there was, in DC, there was detached houses in neighborhoods that were too expensive. And there were detached houses that were in neighborhoods that were too dangerous. There was affordable neighborhoods that were safe, but had row houses, et cetera, et cetera. And finally, we never looked at a single house, by the way. I found in the newspaper, like an ad said, 4-bedroom house, $525 a month in Arlington. Arlington is across the river from Washington. It's in Virginia. And the idea of moving to Virginia I just couldn't imagine it. I was born and raised in Washington. I'm actually a 5th generation Washingtonian. So the idea of living across the river was so weird. But I knew that this was probably the only place we're going to find this house that would meet this criteria. So we drove out to see this house, and we walked in, and there was some dudes looking at a television, watching some sports or something, college kind of guys. And we're like, "Oh, hey, we're here to look at the house." I said, "Okay, cool. The landlord will be here pretty soon, I guess." And I said, "Oh, how's it living here?" And he goes, "It's cool." That was all we had. So we kind of walked around this house, very strange house. And then the landlord guy showed up. He was just a kind of a slightly older guy, kind of maybe an ex-hippie dude, very friendly. And he goes, "Hey guys, so you want the house?" And we're like, I guess, I'd never rented a house. I don't know. And then he put a lease down. I was looking at the lease, which was terrifying because I don't. But one of the things in the lease said 1 year. And I put a line through 1 year and put 6 months. Because I thought there's no fucking way I'm going to stay in Arlington for more than 6 months. But ironically, I lived there for 21 years. I bought the house in 1994. We rented for 13 years. It was a 4-bedroom house, but we built a 5th bedroom to make 5 people. So Sab Gray, who sang for Iron Cross, we built a room that there's like kind of a double front room, like a living room with 2. And we put we built a frame and put cardboard up as a wall. And we found a storm door in the trash and used that as this door to his room. It was pretty squalid. But it was that was Dischord House. But then we had a place to practice. We had an office, the Dischord office. Mm-hmm. All the bands practiced there, Minor Threat, Faith, of course, shortly thereafter, Faith, Iron Cross. And then over the years, everyone just started, everybody practiced there at one time or another. There was times where you have like Beefeater, Embrace, Rites of Spring, 3. Everyone was just practicing at the same time. And you just have everyone had different shifts at the night, And we never had a single complaint.
I was going to ask you, how are the neighbors with that?
They were fine. One time there was a neighbor who lived behind us in kind of catty corner, and we were in the backyard, and she was a much older woman. She was elderly, and she said, "What are you guys doing there?" We're like, "Nothing. We're just live there." She goes, "Well, something's making our china rattle." That was the only sort of complaint we had. There was one night where Eddie Janney and I were in the basement, and I think I was playing drums and he was playing guitar, and we were playing Damage 2 by Black Flag off the Damage records, that riff, and we played it over and over and over. It was probably 3 a.m. It was a summer's night, and we heard a banging at the door, and I went up to the basement steps, and there was a cop standing outside the screen door. He goes, "Dude, you guys, you got to turn your stereo down." We're like, "Okay." That's it. No, not a single other complaint in all those years.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. And it was also weird because, actually the Minutemen practiced there. They stayed at the house. They practiced. They wrote a song there in the basement. Pretty cool. Yeah.
Is it now just offices, or are there still bands rehearsing there?
No one practices anymore. Even Amy and I were the last one to really practice there regularly. Occasionally someone might ask, might need to do something, but it's not really set up. It's not an ideal practice. I mean, I love it, but the ceiling is less than 6 feet tall.
Okay.
You have to sit down.
A lot of hunching over.
Yeah. You have to put your head between the rafters and the ceiling. But also, it's also filled with stuff right now. There's so much. I'm in the middle of reorganizing a bunch of different rooms in the house, and there's just so much stuff in the house. So the house is my office and my archive stuff, and then the Dischord art stuff, whenever we make record, we have like empty jackets or labels. We have all the sort of extra art back in this room. And then I have someone living there who keeps an eye on everything. So he has a room. But the Dischord office is directly across the street. Like if you walked out the front door and went straight, maybe 20 yards or 15 yards, you just walk right into the Dischord office. It's in the basement of a 7-Eleven.
Well, that's convenient.
Yeah, very convenient. We sat on the steps of Dischord House on the porch, staring at the stained glass repair place across the street from us, saying, "We got to get that space." Because we kept thinking we could practice there because you could stand up. And then that guy moved. Actually, he sold his business. He asked if we wanted to buy it, but we didn't. We wanted the space, but we didn't want a stained glass repair business. So he sold the business, and then that guy died, and he moved out. And then these TV repair shop people got in there immediately, and they were there for years. And then one day they said, "We're going to move," and we jumped on it. And so since 1994, we've had that office directly across the street. We don't own it; we rent that.
It always strikes me as you are a very long-term thinker. I mean, it would seem to be, even from the very beginning, the person that recorded those songs in 1980, 1981 is very similar to the person that I'm talking to today. Would you agree?
I think so. Yeah.
A lot of people don't have that, I'll call it wisdom, I'll call it, perspective, their ethos baked in at that age. How do you reckon that happened for you?
I don't know. I don't know if, I wouldn't know if I'd call it wisdom I think that I will say that when I was a kid, when I was like a teenager, there was a moment where I suddenly thought, I just realized that life is right in front of me. It's not a mile away. It's not 10 miles away, not 50 miles away or 100 miles away. It's right in front of me. It's where I am. Like I realized that, and then I realized like, I'm not worried about where I'm going to be in a year or 5 years or 10 years or 20. I don't care about that. I don't think about the future. And I realized that I just remember I was in high school and I just had this realization. I thought, I'm not going to go to college because I felt like it was crazy. I felt like life had been forced into a structure, which was largely shaped by it's the institution of school. Like that's what, most of my time was either getting ready for school, being in school, or recovering from school, high school, right? Mm-hmm. And then you have like your vacation, but vacations are they're just respites like, because you have to go back to school. And why is life shaped like that? Why would life have to have respites? Like, that seems wrong to me. I'm not saying for anybody else. People have their own lives. They make their own decision. For me, I thought life should be rich at all times. It should just be good on. And I thought, why would since I found, like, my experience with college at that time, I was in 11th grade. I visited some friends. As far as I could tell, they're just like very expensive daycare centers where kids are getting high and just partying. And I don't know, it just wasn't, I just felt like it seemed insane. It seemed insane to me. And I also didn't know what I wanted to do. And I'm not against education. I like it. But it seemed like a hugely weird way to do it if you don't know what you're going to do, to go in and just start guessing, especially when you're paying. And my family didn't have money to put me into college. So it'd all be loans. Mm-hmm. So I thought, well, that's indentured servants. Like, as soon as you come out of school, you got to pay back a loan. You have to get a job. So I just saw it as like, oh, that's not what I want to think about. So I think from that point on, I thought, I'm just going to live like my work is right in front of me. So even with this interview, like when you contacted me, I was like, here's my situation. And then you're like, well, could we do it these days? I'm like, all right, well, let's tighten it down the day before, basically, because I work what's in front of me.
Right.
When I do it, and I hope you can see, I'm present. Like, I'm in. Like, I'm not distracted. I'm not like thinking about my next call. Like, I'm right here, right now. So that's just the way I think I've generally been. I'm not an ambitious person.
But to have those thoughts as a young man it's quite profound. To me, it's only after many years of hitting my head against various walls that I've finally realized, the suspicion of institutions and things that you seem to have embraced very early on.
Yes. And I think that, partially my parents were, my mom is dead now, but my dad's still alive. And he's turning 87 tomorrow, as a matter of fact. And I see him every week, he lives nearby. But my parents really, I think, encouraged us to follow our hearts. There was never been any sense of like the value of your time or work would somehow be equated with your wealth or the money you're making or what job you have. They just wanted us to do what was right for us. And we were raised, my father's an Episcopalian, and we went, and my mom was for a while. But when we were raised basically in a church here in Washington called St. Stephen's Incarnation, which was this very radical liberation theology church that really, like, they were very involved with the anti-war movement, the civil rights movement, the women's rights movements, gay rights movement. In 1974, they had women say mass, which really went afoul of the local diocese. And then the priest at the time, William Went, was put on notice that if he was to have a woman say mass again, that he would, be kicked out of the church. So he had 3 women say mass. He just doubled down on it. We were involved with a gay marriage in 1974. We had Panthers, like the Black Panthers had a house just around the corner, and they would come by. I think Stokely Carmichael, was it Stokely Carmichael? No, H-Rap Brown, I think, spoke there. My first rock band I saw there, they took the pews out and we sat on the floor. It was very out there.
Right.
And though I'm not a religious person and I'm not a subscriber to anything, I stopped going to church because, ironically, the thing that drove me out of the church was the actual religion. But their sense of
community
and questioning authority and underscoring the kind of wrongness of the United States government, and say, especially in terms of what was happening in Vietnam, it had a profound effect on me. And I think it gave me a sense of agency. I remember I actually I had written a poem about an anti-war poem when I was probably, I don't know, maybe 9, maybe 8, I don't know. Mm-hmm. And they asked me to read it. And that's probably my first performance I ever did. I read it from over a microphone in front of 200 people, and I was completely comfortable doing it. Because I felt convicted,
right?
Like I was like, fuck war. So I was all in. So I think that probably had our upbringing really. I think it really did allow. I have 3 sisters and a brother, and I think it kind of allowed us to think differently. Mm-hmm. But I don't know. I can't explain myself. I just work. I just do the work.
Well, it sounds like that was a very appropriate foundation for your growth. So your parents were it sounds like they were very supportive of what you were doing in punk rock. They understood it.
They knew it was important, especially like my older sister, Katie, who was 5 years older than me. She was sort of one of the people that really sort of introduced us to punk. When I say us, largely I'm talking about my brother, me, and my brother Alec, who's 3 years younger, and my sister Amanda, who's 8 years younger. And Katie she had gone to see shows before I gotten into it, and then my high school friends really were the ones that kind of pushed it. And then Katie lent me some records, and but I think that whatever we were, I don't think it's about punk. It's about being, if we're radical, if we're countercultural, our parents were fine with that. Mm-hmm. There's never been a time where I felt like my parents were disappointed in our choices, unless they are choices that we were unhappy with.
Right.
If we felt like we made mistakes, then they felt they feel bad about that.
Did they ever go to any shows?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Yeah. And as a matter of fact, I have a tape. My mother came to see the Teen Idols. My mother, my father, and my father's mother, my grandmother Dorothy, and Amanda, who would have been 8 years old at the time, they came to see us play a show at a venue called Fred's Inn in Northeast Washington. It's like a bar. And my mom taped it she used to carry around a Panasonic tape deck, and she's recorded the show, but they left during the show. And so you have this tape of like her and Amanda using the bathroom, and you can hear us playing in the background. And then they walk out of the venue and they walk down the street, this empty 12th Street Northeast, and you can hear the Teen Idols echoing down the empty street. And then they're talking about the show. And my grandmother says, well, that was very interesting. She says, it's very fast and very loud. And then she said, I wonder if they were to play quiet, if they had some parts that were quiet, then they would seem louder. If they would play some parts that were slow, would they seem faster? And I have to tell you that comment played very seriously into what Fugazi became. So yes, they came to see shows. I don't know about embrace, but I think my parents certainly saw Minor Threat, and they definitely came to Fugazi shows. Mm-hmm. Quite a few, yeah. They thought it was interesting. They thought it was a hoot.
All right, we're going to have to leave it there, but don't worry. The second part of our conversation is going to be coming into your podcast queue shortly. Hit subscribe to the Vinyl Guide podcast so you're notified the moment it's available. And also, do not forget to order the first 6 Dischord Records box set at boxset.dischord.com. Do it now before you forget. You have until June 11th, and then pre-orders stop and you'll be left out. It's 1 box set per order, but you could order as many as you like. So go do it now, boxset.dischord.com, and we'll be back shortly with the second half of this interview. Cheers.